What is up, everybody? Good morning. Happy opening day. We have finally made it here. I am Slippin Jimmy here to help you go through this weekend slate. We're going to be doing this hopefully every Thursday, maybe every Friday. We'll kind of see how the schedule works. I was with you guys back in the fall for football when we did the Look Ahead Line show. This is going to be kind of similar to that, except what I hope to bring you on this show every week is that we're going to go through the different matchups for the upcoming series. And then we're going to try and figure out which are those players, which are those pitchers that we want to be able to set some of those specific types of filters, some notifications that you're going to want to set, because one great thing that we can be able to use Outlier for is be able to actually set some of those different notifications and filters and get ahead of the lines for some of these different props. So that's what this show is going to be about. We'll go through some EV bets, hopefully, that you guys can place later today, talk about some of the promos. I know for the opening day, opening series slate, it's going to be, I think, quite a bit of promos that come out, at least regarding baseball. Usually there's not as many during the season. So we'll go through that. What we're going to start with, though, is actually go through the matchups themselves. So what I'm going to do actually right now is going to pull up my screen. Give me 1 second here while we go and do that. And just want to, kind of walk through some of the different series. This is a special, obviously, a special weekend because we've got every single team playing. We've got, essentially every ace that we're going to see on the mound. You're going to see as far as this first game, you've got a clean slate of pitchers. I know there's obviously been a number of injuries that we've seen during spring training, but if you want to, the first thing that I would start to kind of look at is what are the pitchers, right now, since we're at the beginning of the season, we're really only going to be able to use season data that's going to be from last season, that's going to be really anything reliable. So I'll give an example of that. So if we go into, let's say, somebody like, and I'll talk, this is a pitcher that I'm kind of looking to, I don't know necessarily fade, but it's somebody that I do have a bet already on, which is Yusei Kikuchi, who's with his new team, the Los Angeles Angels, right? So we go into Outlier. You can actually see this is already EV to Pinnacle. I got this yesterday at plus 105. This is still EV right now at minus 115. And you kind of go through, you scroll, you see all the different strikeouts. Again, these last 10, this was all when he was with the Houston Astros. This is from last season. So if we're starting to look through some of the props that we're going to be placing, especially in the first 3 to 4 weeks, really the only thing that we should be using, in my opinion, is season stats from last year. It's not going to be maybe as reliable as we start to get some of those more recent splits throughout the rest of the regular season, but we want to at least start with the 2024 stats and then work our way from there. So if you kind of go through, if you've never been using Outlier for MLB props, you'll see there's kind of a, this is the standard sort of hit rate section. We've got all our supporting stats here, which are great. And then you've got I think, which is, unique to Outlier, and also one of the best parts of researching out on Outlier for baseball, is that you've got this whole matchup screen here. So you can see, how did Chicago do against left-handed pitching last year? Where was Kikuchi in terms of his K rate? When you go to individual batters, which you'll see, you're going to see a very similar type of matchup screen. One key note is that if batters are very bad against pitchers in Outlier, you're going to see that appear in red. If batters are very good, then you're going to see that appear in green. Now, it does not change based on if you are selecting a over or an under. So just want to, make sure to call that out, that if you are looking to fade a pitcher, you want to see this on the batter side as green. If you're looking to back a pitcher, you want to see this as red. Now, again, I'm preaching here that you might want to take an under, because you're also seeing that this is red. So it's like, what are you talking about here? Like, you're already trying to say the reverse of what you just said. But that is just how you're going to have to look at it. Is green is they are very, very good against this type of pitcher. Red is they're very bad. And in this case, if you look at the percentile for Kikuchi, if we do change this from a to a under to an over, notice that does change right here, right? So we've got, this is very good for K rate for if you wanted the over. I'm going to go back to the under here though, and just show you that, again, this is looking at Pinnacle as the DVIG. That's going to be the default that you're going to see for props. When we get into setting some of the EV filters for this weekend, I'm going to point out that, love Pinnacle as far as for player props for MLB. It's got to be one of many books that you're going to use. And one good thing that Outliers released in the last couple of months is a weighted average, which that's what we're going to be using for primarily a lot of our props here. All right, so back to kind of that process of some of those pitchers that we're going to look to potentially fade. I'm going to actually go to another site here, if this decides to load. Yep, here we go. This is a site I've actually personally built to track different types of pitcher and StatCast performance throughout the regular season. I'll be happy to share this in the Outlier Discord if you guys want this. So I'm going to look at, here's all of our starters. And if you are familiar with ever looking at baseball StatCast, you will see that red is very good for a given pitcher or batter. Blue is bad. Okay, so red is good, blue is bad. And then what I'm going to typically do here is say, okay, who are guys that, maybe had a lower, what we call Sierra. That's just a more advanced way of ERA. And then we kind of just, try and determine like, who are the guys that have, quite blue in some of these statistics, and then who are the ones that are red. Ones that are red, we're going to back. Ones that are blue, we're going to try and fade. So if I go back into this Kikuchi example, so you're going to see that Kikuchi, again, great K rate, 28%. And then if you go and you look at the White Sox, 23.9% in terms of their K rate last year. So in the bottom half of the league. Now, against left-handed pitching, that K rate goes up a little bit, but it's not significant, right? We're looking at 23.9, 24.2. So it's not really a significant uptick. 6.5 Ks for Kikuchi, if we go back to even when he was pitching quite well with Houston, right? He was under this 53% of the time last season. And now we're asking for an opening day starter against a team that K's a little bit more against lefties, but maybe not so much. Not really different from righties to lefties. Another thing that you want to look at is, how did this pitcher perform on the road last year? So if I'm going to go back to Kikuchi, and I think his is a little bit weird on here, so I'm just going to go away, and we're just going to go, let's say, how did he do starting in July last year until he finished in October, right? So pretty good K rate right here on the road. And then if we look at that for home, 32.6. Again, 29%, still great, but you can see that he's definitely at least a little bit more susceptible on the road. His FIP goes up, his WOBA, which I believe, 258, a little bit actually worse at home. Lower ground ball rate, higher fly ball rate, a little bit higher of home run to 9. So Kikuchi, even when he was pitching really well down the stretch with Houston, not necessarily much better whenever he's going to be on the road. So just going back again, this is kind of where this all started with this specific bet. So this is definitely one that I would still want to place here at under 6.5. Again, if you look at, this is EV, he was under this 53% of the time last season. You kind of look at some of those K rate statistics for Chicago. They're in the bottom half, but they're not like Seattle bad against left-handed pitching. And so this is probably a bet that I'm going to want to add to my slip here for the upcoming weekend. So that's just one quick example. I want to kind of go through some of the other guys here that I think are interesting for the weekend. Another thing that I would recommend for you guys to do is make sure to go to check out Fangraphs. Fangraphs has the probables grid. You can also, by the way, I think get this on RotoWire, but I believe you have to pay for that in terms of getting the full probables for the upcoming weekend. But what's great about this is if you're starting to kind of research some of these bets, we want to look at who are some of these starters in the next couple of days if we want to start kind of building some of these filters for different props and stuff that I want to play. So, for example, I know that we've got Hunter Brown going for the Astros tomorrow. He's up against the Mets. So if we look back here, I'm going to go back to our little handy dandy dashboard. Hunter Brown, he's one of my Cy Young favorites, to be honest, for this season. He's a righty. Now we've got Soto in the lineup. There are some changes, but look, Mets, a little bit worse against righties last year. Again, there's a big asterisk with Soto being in the lineup here. But that's something that, might be interesting to me in terms of looking for a potential filter that I want to set. So what I can be able to do in Outlier, if we see Hunter Brown, we're going to go, so Hunter Brown's not there. But what I can do is in my props, let me see if I can set, we find, okay, so this is actually a key thing that we'll call out here. So Hunter Brown not pitching today. What you can do in the future, though, is that you can actually, any of the players that are playing today, you can be able to set filters on, and then you can have that filter saved going forward. So can't select Hunter Brown right now, but what I may want to do is look at maybe some Mets that had high strikeout rates last year. So if I go back to, let's go to teams, we'll go to the NL East. And then we're going to go to right here in their batting stats leaders. And then who are some guys that had pretty high K rates? All right, well, Vientos, right? 29.7% on the K rate. How did he do against our righties? So versus righties last year, he was, let's see, where's your K rates? Yeah, pretty much the same, a little bit higher for lefties, but still high K rate for Vientos here. So one thing that we could go and set as a filter to start saving is we're going to look and say, all right, I'm going to select Vientos, and I'm going to go for strikeouts, and I'm going to select batter strikeouts. Now, Vientos doesn't have any listed right now, but if once those do come up, now I'm going to say like, okay, give me what are his odds from -130 to plus odds, show me any alt lines, and make sure that I have all of my books selected here. And then all I'm going to do, don't have to take any action on this, right? I'm going to save this. I'm going to, call this my Vientos Ks. And then the great thing about some of the filters in Outlier is that you can actually set the notifications for that. So I'm going to set this here just to text my phone whenever that happens, and then boom. So when Vientos, those K lines get posted, you're going to get an alert right on your phone when you can be able to actually go and bet those and start to do some of the research on what might be a good one. So if I see a Vientos, like over 1.5, and that is plus money, that's going to be something I'd be interested in for tomorrow. I got a question here in the chat and William Contreras props. So if we look at who Contreras is playing today, I'd be happy to quickly kind of just look at that. He's going up against the lefty and Rodon. So Rodon, let's go back here. Again, we can kind of build a filter for this as well if you want. So I'm going to take out my filter. I'm going to reset this. We're going to go to Contreras here. All right, and then we're going to go into his player page. So if you kind of scroll down, this is what I was talking about against the key matchup stats. Contreras, one good thing that we can see right here, he's good against lefties. A pretty successful, higher batting average, much higher BABIP, hard hit rate, kind of about the same. Rodon, yeah, he's pretty much the same against righties and lefties. Maybe a little bit higher on the batting average. So For me, I'd probably be looking at playing a single here at that plus 105 number. That's not terrible. And for what we can potentially get there. This one, insights, by the way, kind of ignored those for now just because it's the beginning of the season. But yeah, to answer your question on William Contreras, if I'm playing a prop for him, probably going to go play the single here at plus 105 on BetMGM. That would be a good play, I think, to pocket here. Now, you don't see any of these here as EV. I will go to the home run tab either home runs or doubles are kind of the ones that you're going to probably see the most EV on coming out of the gate or when props first get posted, especially, we'll get into this here in a second on like what are the EV filters you want to set up. But, since we have Contreras up, let's go back to our probables grid and I will just see. So he's going to be facing Fried, another lefty. So again, one of the nice things about we're placing a bet on Contreras today against the lefty. So I'm going to go back into my prop screen and I'm going to go adjust my filter. So we've got already William Contreras selected. And I'm going to do bases. I'm going to do singles. And why not? We'll put in doubles here. And then we are going to do the same thing like we did with Vientos. So we're going to set those odds. Show any alt lines. Now, obviously, this is going to show results for today. But one thing that I'm going to change right here is we'll do 2024. We want anything, let's say, from like 50% or above. And then I'm going to save this. So I'm going to call this Contreras props. And one thing, it'll take a little bit of work, but it is going to be worth it. When you're saving these filters, these are also filters you can do like week by week. You don't have to just save these and then only use that filter going forward. So maybe one thing that I could do instead here is, instead of just calling this Contreras filters, I'll just call this Contreras New York Yankees, 327 or something. So like March series. So then after this weekend, after that series, right, we see that he's got a couple of good matchups. He's got the Rodon one. He's got Fried, who he's going to see on Saturday. Stroman on Sunday, who I'm sorry if there's Yankee fans on the stream, but Stroman definitely, we'll see how he does this season, but he was pretty bad last year. So you can go, point is you can go save those filters, those notifications come for that weekend. And then if you see a series that he's not going to necessarily have as good of matchups, maybe he's going against like somebody like Scooble or someone, you can go delete that. You can just, build it kind of series by series. Got another question here in the chat. How quick is Outlier when it comes to sending out notifications on a filter compared to when a prop drops, let's say, on a pick'em site? It should be instantaneous, basically. So Outlier is just waiting for whenever that becomes available on the API. So once that becomes available, that notification should get popped up. Just like you would set whenever we go to the EV feed in just a second. Anytime there's something that's EV, we're looking basically at live data. So it should be, within seconds of when that prop gets posted. As soon as Outlier gets that data back, it'll send out the notification. So hopefully that'll help answer your question there. So let me just do one more quick rundown here of a few guys I think are interesting to fade for this weekend. So if we look at back here, we're looking at just for today and tomorrow. Again, you want to look at guys like, for me, coming up, we'll talk about this on the show here in the next couple of weeks, but I would be much more willing to be placing bets the first month of the season on pitchers and backing pitchers or fading pitchers versus backing batters. And the reason for that being is, for one, you've got colder weather in April. So any of the players that are playing in outdoor parks, it's going to you're not just the ball's just not going to fly as far. There's not going to be as much offense. There's just typically runs are a little bit depressed in April, so it's a little bit more of an advantage for a pitcher. Pitchers also, batters have to adjust to what they're seeing from pitchers. It's not the other way around. Pitchers are not going to be adjusting from what they see from batters. So that usually gives that first, that first month, you're going to see pitchers have a little bit more of an advantage there. So when I'm looking to kind of build my props for April baseball, I'm looking at who are guys that either are going to, I think, have, really high strikeouts. Like, for example, let's look at somebody who I really like today, which is actually Sonny Gray. So if I go back and look here, right, Sonny Gray last year, 30.3%. That would be in, I believe, the top 10% for K rate last season. Obviously, you've got Crochet, you've got Snell, some of those, guys that would be a little bit more obvious. But I'll go in and I'm just going to go for my strikeouts. And then what I'll typically do here too is, like, if I'm looking at this on Baseball Savant, on my site, or on Fangraphs, I see some of these guys. I'm just going to start putting in some of them into here. So we've got Crochet, we've got Snell, and then I'm just going to do Gray because I want to show you the difference here between lines. And I'm going to sort this by who's going to have the lowest strikeout line that we're going to be able to see, who's going to have the highest. So Crochet right now, I really like Crochet today, but 7 strikeouts, same thing for Snell. 7 strikeouts, I think, also, by the way, very doable. Don't hate this as potentially an SGP option. But if you look at somebody like Sonny Gray, you're going to be paying a lot less to be able to get somebody who's got an excellent K rate, right? So, and again, we're talking about that top 10% of pitchers with K rate based on last season. And of course, what do we see? We go here. This is already showing some EV. This is a great place to then kind of affirm some of your suspicions if you're seeing hey, this guy's got a really high K rate, but he's got a low line. And you go in and you see it's EV. To me, that's already a great signal that this might be a good bet. So -120 here on DraftKings. Take a look at the other books. You can see that, yeah, this is by far and away the cheapest price you're going to get by about 10 cents. And then if we look at the Minnesota batting statistics, they were pretty good in terms of K rate, pretty disciplined against right-handed pitching. But again, I'm going to go back and we're looking at season stats here. We go back to the Twins. How did they do against right-handed pitching? And we're going to go from July. What was that rate? So 29. All right, so you can see a lot worse in terms of WRC plus. They got worse as the season went on. 23% K rate starting in July of last season. And if we go back here, the whole season 21.3, but starting in July, 23%. So I kind of like that. I saw a little bit of an uptick. I know, for example, the Twins basically did nothing this offseason. So this is going to be a pretty similar lineup that we're going to be seeing out of the gate. So yeah, I think Sonny Gray, great buy low here today at 5.5 on DraftKings. Fine, paying a little bit of extra juice there at -120. Got another question here in the chat, and then we're going to go look at some EV stuff and some promos. Do you think betting no-hit first inning are good to bet at the beginning of the season? I think it really, I just think it really comes down to the pitcher. One thing that I would say, if you want to bet if we're talking, no hit or no run in first inning, if you want to play like a Nerfy, yes, those are probably, I'd have to kind of go back and do a little bit of back testing on this, but my guess is that Nerfies are going to hit a little bit higher at a higher rate. Then you got to look at what's the price for some of these. So if we go into the games for today, let's see. So I don't think we can filter based on, but we'll just go at what's the Brewers and Yankees, right? So first inning, I am seeing, where is our, All right, we're only seeing total hits on here right now, but yeah, like under 1.5 minus 120. You might see a little bit more juice in terms of those nerfies or under the hits. What I was going to say though is that another thing that you can kind of go do and play around with in Fangraphs, if you want to do a little bit more research on that outside of Outlier, is go check out the splits leaderboard in Fangraphs. And what you can do from there is actually set some different splits in terms of like, how does the given pitcher do within the first inning? So if I go to pitching, and then I'm going to go down and I'm going to select, for example, like we're just, again, looking at that Yankees Brewers game. So I've got this in. We're going to update this. We need to update the time because that would, we don't have any games yet here. So we'll update this. All right, so this is just the first inning, right? We're just looking at the first inning for how do these pitchers typically perform. You can see that if I want to look at something like BABIP or what expected FIP would be, you know, hard hit rate, first time through the order. These guys, they're okay. I wouldn't say it's like anything super special between either of them. A WOBA of 320 for Rodon. So like, you know, this is I don't know for me personally if there'd be any sort of play on under runs or hits for this one, but this is a quick, easy way for you to kind of do a little bit of additional research to see like which pitchers suck first time through the order and which of those pitchers are maybe a little bit better as the game goes on, or vice versa. There's kind of a traditional pitchers get worse as they go through each order. But there's some pitchers I know, like Kevin Gausman, who is traditionally pretty terrible the first time he sees batters. So, you know, take that for what it's worth, but that would be kind of my 2 cents on batting the Nerfies, no hits in the first inning. They're fun sweats, that's for sure. All right. As you can hear, all of the drilling that's going on in my house here, building a stadium here for opening day. Let's talk about some of the EV filters I think that you're going to want to start setting here over the next couple of weeks. So with baseball, as with any other sport, it's going to be dependent in terms of what you're going to be setting DVIG books for on which books tend to have worse prices for this specific sport or this specific market, and which ones tend to be a little bit more accurate. So for baseball, the filters that you're going to want to probably be setting here is, so I'm going to set this as, I'm actually going to set the required book here as DraftKings. So DraftKings actually, especially for home runs, traditionally a little bit sharper than the other books. And Caesars maybe a little bit better, just they also add a lot of VIG, so their prices are just naturally going to be maybe a little bit closer. But I'm going to add DraftKings here as required. I'm going to add Penny as optional. The other thing that I still want to make sure that I'm doing with baseball, as with any other sport, is that we want to add, you know, pretty much if you can get lines for as many of these as possible and use a weighted average, that's going to get you much more confidence in the props you're betting for baseball than if you're only just using one book, because it's rare that one book is going to be so far and away better on the price versus just kind of getting a market average. But I do want to make sure that DraftKings is selected here. I'm going to set my weighted average. So we're going to give a little bit more weight to DraftKings. The books that I know traditionally are bad at pricing baseball, we're going to put like FanDuel, MGM a little bit lower, and then I'm going to give probably equal weights here for Caesars, Pinnacle, ESPN Bet, and then we're going to also Bet365, another one that is traditionally not very good at pricing. So we're going to put those as our weights, and then we're going to close that out. Make sure our minimum books. So I'm going to have at least 4 books that we want. That includes required. So that means basically we have to have DraftKings, and we got to have 3 other books with a line. That is going to be my method that I typically will set. I'm going to use Additive or Shin And then we're going to use my minimum EV here as, let's say, 3%. So we went down quite a bit, but these are going to be good bets. So we have 11 results that we are seeing on here. And then if we can find MLB, we've even reduced that a little bit more. But trust me, this is a good and I'm going to set this right here. This is a good set of filters that will get you, I think, a lot of success in terms of the EV stuff. All right, so we've got one that I think is worth taking a look at. You've got Logan Gilbert here, 6.5 strikeouts, minus 128 on FanDuel. If we take a look at the matchup for Logan Gilbert, you're going to scroll down and see he's going up against the formerly Oakland, just the Athletics, and they are one of the worst teams by K rate against right-handed pitching. So that's pretty good. Seeing a lot of green here to kind of back that up. I might want to do just one other quick check on my page here just to see if we go back into Oakland against right-handed pitching. Yeah, 25.2%. And then just quickly to see, like, you know, Oakland, for example, I know last year was hitting the crap out of the ball towards the end of the season. Yeah, so they did drop in K rate, but still in the bottom half of the league against right-handed pitching. They're also going to be at Seattle, which there tends to be a little bit more Ks in that park. So that's probably a good one that I'm going to add to my slip. And what's nice, again, is that we're not just looking at the singular DraftKings book here. We've got a market average, and we've got 4 different books that we're going to be looking against. So Logan Gilbert over 6.5 Ks, probably a good one there at minus 128 for FanDuel. So I would say that is one that you could go and look at. We've got another one here. I mean, you'll see that the first inning result ends in a tie. There's like a lot of these kind of like derivative for inning ones. You know, I think these are kind of interesting, but you know, again, it's like depends on how much volume you really want. With EV, it's kind of hard to really do some handicapping on these ones. Again, if you want to spend the time and do it, it probably will be profitable for you in some aspect, but those are the only 2 that are showing on my screen. If I wanted to, you know, reduce the EV and just say like, hey, like, let's just go like 2%. You can see we've got a couple other ones. We've got Chris Sale we're looking at here on Underdog. So this is another nice way we're like, all right, if it's 3%, I'm probably, there's a very, very good chance I'm playing this. If it's under 3%, well, it's still being EV is a signal to me that there's something here. There could be something here. Let's do a little bit more research. So like if I look at San Diego up against lefties, so we'll go back here. So against left-handed pitching, 17.2%, one of the best K rates in terms of discipline against lefties last season. So yeah, that kind of tracks and why we might want to look for an under here. In fact, if you want, you could even get a little bit spicier here at the 4.5 at plus 136. And that one does have a little bit of EV here as well. So unfortunately, I'm not in a state with Prize Picks as a pick'em, but that I think would be a nice add to one of your pick'em slates here, where you can get that Chris Sale under 5.5 Ks, at minus 104 or the plus 136 at 4.5. And then other one I'll just look at, it's kind of interesting. Team prop here for the Kansas City Royals, under 2.5 runs, plus 220. If we go and look at who are they playing today, they're playing Bybee. You know, he's been, it looks like, how does he done against? Yeah, Tanner Bybee pretty dominant against Kansas City. It looks like in terms of average, although 4.09 earned runs, maybe not that great. Maybe look at that, I guess, a little bit more. But whole point here is that that's a good filter to set, and then you can start to play around with this, start to kind of reduce some of the EV, and do a little bit of research on your own on those specific props. And again, you go back and scroll. Like, the great thing here with Outlier is that you got the EV, and then you can do the research from the same screen, which is pretty great. So those are some of the EV ones that are sticking out for today. Go in again, set that filter. I'll share this here in the Outlier Discord, and that'll start sending notifications for you for the upcoming weekend. You can be able to start using, play some bets here. So we've got a couple before we get into some of the promos that we're seeing today that I really like, all that are EV. So you've got Kikuchi under 6.5 Ks. That's on DraftKings minus 115. That one's still, I think, great play for playing today with a White Sox team that I don't think is necessarily, they're not a lot better, but I do think they're 6.5 is a pretty high number for Kikuchi. Sonny Gray over 5.5 Ks, minus 120 here on DraftKings. Logan Gilbert over 6.5. And actually, I think this has already moved on FanDuel, so we may have missed that. It was minus 120. So if you were on the live stream, great, you got that one. But that looks like that might have moved to minus 138. So again, you can also, by the way, just as one last note on that, let's say one of those prices went away and you're like, damn, missed that prop. Well, if we go back to our filter screen here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my filters. I'm going to look for Gilbert. I'm going to make sure that I select strikeouts, right? And then all I'm going to do on the strikeouts is I'm just going to say, hey, if that minus 120 comes back, or if it's available somewhere, give me, make sure to notify me. So we'll select as an over. I'm seeing 7 now, but that would be a push on Prize Picks, so I don't like that as much. But I'm just going to save that. I'm going to call this, Logan Gilbert AF strikeouts alert. So now, if this does for some reason move back down, we saw that this was EV already, and there's some good evidence to back that up. That's going to notify you when that K prop gets to that price. Now you've got that, you can immediately go place that, and then you don't have to worry. And you don't have to keep checking back and forth. So that's a nice thing here too about being able to save and set some of those notifications. So Logan Gilbert, 6.5 Ks. If you can get that over at minus 120, I would try and go and play that. Okay, we are about almost 40 minutes through the stream. One last note before promos, I'll just go back into the probables grid. So remember, there are teams that are going to be off tomorrow. So another note for this weekend, if you want to play some outs in terms of over outs on pitchers, maybe not a bad strategy for the teams that are going to have off days for tomorrow. 4 bips Miley virus that I used were, I believe you're talking about the EV filter. So here is that filter right here. So I've got DraftKings as the required book, and then I'm just selecting Penny, FanDuel, Caesars, MGM, ESPN, Bet365. Basically all of these here as optional, but the minimum 4 books doesn't matter which minimum 4 as long as DraftKings is one of them. That's just the key call out there, is that it's not saying it has to be these 4. It's basically saying, hey, it has to be DraftKings and then at least 3 of these. And that's what's going to give us the props that you're going to see on the screen. So you can set that, by the way, where it's only 4, and then you say minimum books 4, and it has to always be those 4 books. In this case, I'm just saying, look, if I can get a good market average and I can get that price from DraftKings, then fine. I don't care if it's, MGM, Caesars, FanDuel, and DraftKings instead of having Penny. But if I wanted Penny as well, I can set that as required. Yeah, just again, to polish this point off, though, guys that are going to have off days for tomorrow, you can go and pick up some of the outs that you would, maybe want to play some overs on. And then for underouts, might look at guys that don't have a bunch of back-to-back days. So you can see like a Justin Steele, right? Cubs coming back from Tokyo, they don't have an off day until next Thursday. So they have a little bit more pressure on their, on their starters that either they might have to stay a little bit longer or, you kind of can be able to play a little bit of some manager playbook there in order to figure out some of the out stuff. So, and then as far as today goes and tomorrow, I will post this list every day in the Discord for you guys. But the pitchers, if we're just looking straight at, Sierra, things that we might want to fade, I do think Sevy is a guy that you might want to fade today. And as far as tomorrow, Jameson Taillon, Gosman, although Gosman I think is at home, much better pitcher I believe at home. I have to double check on that, but I know he has his home and the way splits are pretty drastic. So yeah, those would be, I would say, Jack Leiter. I'm kind of waiting to see what he's going to do. But probably a Italian and a Severino for fading, and then for backing, I mean, you can go Crochet, you can go Sonny Gray, like I said today. For tomorrow, I love Yamamoto this season, so he might be somebody that I might be backing as well. All right, promos. Last section here. So promos, you are going to see on ESPN. There is a live boost, or not ESPN, DraftKings. You're going to see a live boost. There is a no sweat home run. As far as the no sweat home run, a guy that I kind of like today would be, if I'm going to look back here at like home runs per 9, who's going to give up the highest home runs per 9? Would be somebody that would be potentially a Brewer. So back to, look for guys that are good against lefties, playing obviously in a hitter-friendly ballpark there with the Yankees. I know for me, I liked, going after Cal Raleigh. So I already mentioned that Sevy was a guy that I wanted to fade. So if you want to look at Cal Raleigh's price on DraftKings, so we'll go out of here real quick and just go, let's go to home runs. Yep, and this is EV actually already too. Much worse price on FanDuel, but you do see plus 250, and you can get a no sweat bet there. So that would be, I kind of looked at, I'm interested to look at some of those Brewers as well for a player that I would like in the no sweat home run. Surprisingly, I guess DraftKings doesn't have as many promos as I thought I was going to see for opening day. You can see FanDuel. I know Dinger Tuesday, I believe at some point will be back. Let's see. We've got a no sweat SGP that you might want to take a look at here. Also the home run jackpot. So again, that's another place that you can play Raleigh. He's already got good odds, and you can play in the jackpot there at plus 300. Doesn't have to be a big stake either, and you can get a share of those bonus bets. And then for Caesars, they've got a parlay profit boost. If we're looking at a profit boost that I would try to be interested in, again, I would kind of look, if we're looking back at some of these picks, see if you can put parlay a Kikuchi under Ks, Sonny Gray over Ks, and I would probably look at a Garrett Crochet over Ks as well to see if that can qualify there for that 30% parlay boost. That'd be a in terms of just like guys, I think we're going to be over or under some of their numbers. Those are some good ones there to go for that Caesars one. So I think Bet 365 also has some promos today. Make sure to go check those out as well. I believe they will start doing the 30% SGP boost. So next show, I will see if we can highlight and come up with something there for you. But yeah, this has been our MLB preview for the first week, opening day of games. Cannot wait. I've got my Mets coming on here at 4 o'clock later today, and I'm already fading their starter in Clay Holmes. But we'll be back here. We're going to do this again every Thursday. We'll look for some good bets, some filters you can save, preview the weekend. I'm around in the Outlier Discord, so if you guys got questions on pitchers that I like, fade, just how can you use the app and make more money, betting baseball. I can tell you Outlier on baseball is by far my, most profitable tool that I use to be able to kind of research and make money. So yeah, you can find me there. I'm Slippin Jimmy. This has been fun, and I'll see you guys next week.